Hi, my name is Jasmine. I'm one of the clinical training consultants here with Omnicell, and today I'm here to teach you about your cabinet. So I'm going to go ahead and start on the exterior of the cabinet here. You've got your scanner, and this function in this holster like so. It is in an auto scan function. You will be able to scan your meds to return them back to the pocket. So if you find the scanner in the holster like so, it's not wrong, but now you see this white light. It's now a virtual button. You'll be able to lift the scanner like so and tap on the virtual button in order to scan your medications. Okay, and we'll go through that process as we go through training. So I'm just going to set it back in the caddy like so. On the faceplate here, you have your, like similar to a desktop computer for the keyboard, you have a number pad, a bio ID, and a touch screen. One thing I do want to mention about the entire panel here, it is best practice to go ahead and use alcohol to clean this. Please don't use the purple wipes or the green wipes, anything like that. You are able to use the purple wipes to clean the metal pieces of the machine, but not the screen here. So a couple of forms and functions I'm going to go over with you guys. I'm going to go ahead and lift this keyboard up like so and expose some of the information under here. So under here you have your receipt paper and your label paper. Nursing will be responsible to change out those items. There is a notch here like so, and we'll go ahead and pull it out. The instructions on how to change out the receipt paper and the labels are on the face of this. So I'm going to pull this plate out like so, and that exposes the plate here. So I'm going to pull the face of this to expose the receipt paper and the label paper, and I'm going to show you how to change that out. There are two green levers. It's the exact same way to change out the receipt and the labels. I would need to release this green lever, which is now unlocked, to remove the older paper. And in removing your older paper, you notice that you'll have the green spindle, dowel, whatever you'd like to call it. I'm from the South, so we call those spindle. And it goes into the port like so. There is a green one for the receipt paper, and there is a yellow one for the labels. Both of these belong to the cabinet, so please don't throw these away. So when you're replacing your paper and your receipt, ensure that you have this ready to go. So there is a specific direction in which the spindle needs to face, one larger side than the other. You have your new roll of paper. You set it in the caddy, so, and align it. Again, remember this is an unlocked function. So I'm going to push the green lever forward to now lock it, and now it's in an auto feed function in order to feed the paper. Okay. And let it do its thing, and let the paper feed through. It works the exact same way for the labels. Okay. I'm going to close the face of this up, tighten up the slack, and now you have replaced the receipt paper and the labels. On the back portion here, there are two caddies that almost look like cup holders, like you would see in a car seat. And so a lot of the times, pharmacy will put an additional roll of receipt paper and labels. That way nursing's able to change those out as it comes. Right? So I'm going to go ahead and push the plate of this back. That's been changed. On the left-hand side here, there is a universal power symbol, a green power symbol. So you would be instructed by pharmacy to press that button if you needed to power the machine off. Please do not power the machine off unless instructed by pharmacy. Pharmacy is your first line of defense. If you are instructed to power down the machine, you would press that button. For about 5 seconds, it'll shut the entire machine down. But if you tap that button for 3 seconds, it does a soft reboot. Okay, so just be mindful of that. I'm gonna go ahead and close this up. So, getting into our touch screen here, which is very intuitive, right? As we go through with Omnicell, you're gonna notice that things are green, things are lighting up, things are kind of illuminating themselves, and we'll go through that process together. On the exterior screen here, up top, we're gonna go over what those terms mean. So up top, you see ZZ Train 4, Train, and Omnicell Preceptor Program. That's the cabinet name and the cabinet area. Say, for example, something's going on with the cabinet. You might have to call pharmacy, and they may ask you, what is the name of the cabinet? And you would give them that information up top. Okay, so that's for some of your troubleshooting. Over to the right here, you have this tab called About This Omni. And tapping on About This Omni, you've got IP addresses, gateway information, supplier information, a lot of technical and analytical information that one might not know what the heck that is, because I didn't know what that was, okay? So over here on the bottom right, you have MSMQ processing up. When that is saying processing up, that means the server is speaking to the cabinet, and therefore transaction and communication is happening. If you see processing down, failed, disconnected, that means something is going on the back end, and pharmacy should be aware in order to tie up those loose ends. And I'm just going to tap up to my previous screen to bring me out to my home screen here. Over on the right, underneath About This Omni, you have a barcode item check. Barcode item check is very helpful. Pharmacy uses that. Nursing can also use it as well to ensure that the barcode of your item is working and functioning appropriately. You also have a change volume and brightness on the exterior of the screen. And in tapping on change volume and brightness, you are able to increase the volume of the machine, increase the brightness of the machine. And if you notice, the sounds don't sound like anything else in the hospital. It is meant to sound that way. The sounds with Omnicell are a safeguard to protect you. So, if you are in the middle of a transaction, if you notice that button is on the exterior of the home screen, you are able to manipulate the volume and the brightness using the hotkeys. Okay? So the hotkeys are F9 through F12. F9 and F10 allow the brightness to go up and down. F11 and 12 create the volume to go up and down. And if you forget anything I said here, the instructions for that are right underneath. Okay, going back out to my previous screen. So for training, when you're coming in and practicing, we have a training nurse 1 and a training nurse 2. So as we'll go through these functions together, I will be using the training nurse 1 as a primary nurse and the training nurse 2 as a witness. So on the day-to-day basis, when you come in for the first time of the day, you will go ahead and put in your username and fingerprint, and I'm referring to Epic, okay? Once your fingerprint is registered within the system. For the rest of the day, for a 12-hour span on that particular cabinet, you're able to just fingerprint yourself. But say you went to another cabinet, another area using another machine, you're going to need to put your username and fingerprint in again. So I'm going to be typing everything out very manually because my fingerprint is not registered here in the system. So when you log in for the day, the system knows that you're coming to do nursing functions. So again, if you notice the green, like I said, Omnicell likes green. So we have some filters and some tabs. So up at the top, we have an Add New Patient. So Add New Patient tab is needed to say if you needed to add a new patient in a trauma or an emergency. If you notice, the 3 asterisk fields here are mandatory fields. So those are fields that you need to be able to fill out some descriptive form of information. For an example, gunshot wound OR 12, just something in order that pharmacy can tie up that patient that you created on the back end, sort of like a reconciliation process. So just be mindful to fill those fields out. Okay, just going back to my previous screen here. You also have a sort by room and a sort by name tab. This is very helpful if you wanted to sort your patients just another way. Down at the bottom, again, some more filters. So the first tab here is our global list. Our global list is every single patient in the hospital. The local lists are all the patients on your respective floor. And the partial dose lists are the patients that have outstanding waste. For those of you that are in procedural areas, it's probably best practice to go ahead and go from your global list. Say, for example, that the patient wasn't pulled from another area. So just go ahead and go from your global list. So for this training example, I'm going to tap on my patient, Mr. Jason Barak. So again, more filters, and I'm just going to go over those and give you an explanation for those. So up top, you have your allergy info. So your allergy info is pulled in from Epic. Okay? The system holds about 1,000 characters. If your patient has over 1,000 characters of allergies, please ensure to look to Epic as your source of truth. Okay? And those will pull over up at the top. You also have a patient management. Patient management is very helpful if you've got 10 John Does or 10 Jane Does and you're trying to ensure that your John Doe or Jane Doe is the correct patient. So there is medical record information, their room number, date of birth, they'll have their accession number, any information that will pull in from Epic. And again, going back to my previous screen, okay. You also have next patient on the side as well. Next patient just takes you back out to the primary screen that you were on. Okay, so I'm going to tap on Mr. Jason Barak again. Over here on the right-hand side of the screen, you have your main nursing functions. How to remove a medication, how to return a medication, and how to waste a medication. Those are your main critical nursing functions, and we'll go through that process together. And I'll explain remove kits as we go. So I'm gonna go ahead and tap on remove meds. Down here at the bottom, more filters as we had before. So the first tab, stocked meds. Your stocked meds could be considered as your overrides. Okay, so anything that's overridable currently on your floor, it will maintain that status. Over onto the next one, you have active med orders. So active med orders are all the orders that are active for your patient. The next tab over are your inactive med orders, so perhaps a hold medication, a discharged medication, or a medication that has not been verified by a pharmacy would be there as well. You also have scheduled meds and PRN meds, okay? With your scheduled meds, you are able to sort them by due time and alphabet, so you are able to sort them there, okay? So for those in procedural areas, you would predominantly have your display meds to remove and stack meds, since a lot of things are on override for you already, okay? And that's, like I said, procedural areas, MRI, cath lab, things like that. So the first tab, if you notice, display meds to remove, is like our Amazon shopping list. And as we go through the queuing process, you'll see how those medications will be listed here, okay? So for our training, I'm gonna pull from our active meds. I'm gonna go ahead and pull out our Tylenol, which is here. And when I tap on Tylenol, it tells me my dose information, which is 500. My intended dose is 500, and my quantity to remove is 1. And I'm gonna say, okay, right? If you notice, there is a 1 here now. Remember that shopping list that I was talking about? When you go to your display meds to remove, that Tylenol that I selected is right there. So I'm gonna go back to our active meds. I'm gonna go ahead and pull out some lorazepam. Okay, my intended dose is 3. There's 3 here as well. And my quantity to remove is 2, because the dose comes in 2 milligrams per 1 ml. So it's just giving me a dispensing alert telling me that my issue exceeds the dose by 1. And notice that it's in red. And I'm gonna say okay. Okay. Again, another dispensing alert, just alerting you to say that the issue amount exceeds the intended dose. Do not administer the full amount of issue. Okay. And I'm gonna say okay. Those 2 items that I've selected, the display meds to remove, it's right there, okay, just for a bit of context. So I'm gonna go ahead and tap on remove now. If you can see the guiding light, Omnicell is very manual, so you're gonna have to be pulling out drawers. If you notice that lids are not lifting, popping up on their own, you're gonna have to manually lift those, okay? So there is a green arrow here. The arrow is pointing to this lock-lidded bin and instructing me to lift it, and notice how it's unlocked. Okay. For training, we have our cards, but on a normal basis, you would have your medication in order to count your medications, okay? So this first item here is lorazepam, 2 milligrams per 1 ml. So it's asking me enter the correct count prior to dispensing, okay? So at this time, I'm gonna go ahead and create a discrepancy. That way we have something to resolve later, okay? So currently my count inside tells me that it's 196, okay? But I'm gonna go ahead and say we only have 195 in order to create our discrepancy. If I was correct, I could simply put the correct amount of the 196 and say okay. But like I said, I'm creating an intentional discrepancy. So I'm gonna say okay. This is one way to know that you're going to create a discrepancy. The question asks, is this the correct count prior to dispensing? The system is not going to ask you that if you're correct, okay? So for this, I'm gonna go ahead and say yes, right? If you notice here, there is a reopen last lid. These lids are very heavy, and it's yelling at me. These lids are incredibly heavy. So say, for example, you accidentally close the lid. I can simply go to reopen last lid, grab what I need, and close it back up, okay? That's another way to know that you have a discrepancy. You're going to get a discrepancy receipt, okay? And I'll explain that discrepancy receipt in just a minute. It's telling me to open my flashing drawer. There is a flashing drawer down at the bottom, guiding me where to go. I'm gonna go ahead and pull out that drawer. So if you notice that the prongs are telling me that my Tylenol is located here, within this four grouping. So I would go ahead and take my Tylenol, okay? I do wanna mention the tabs up top. You have a change bin level. You are able to change a bin level, and let me explain the importance and the helpfulness of this. And changing a bin level, say for example, I came to my Tylenol. There was no Tylenol here. I could simply tap on change bin level during my removal transaction, put the quantity I had, so if it was 0, I'd tap in 0 and say okay. That sends a notification to pharmacy saying, hey, we need this unit needs an amount of Tylenol or whatever that item is. So you are able to do that change bin level for narcotics and non-narcotics. All right, we're gonna do cancel there, right? You also are able to print a label for your medication. So say this was Ancef, you are able to print a label for that medication that's patient specific, and it would be here. And it would also have a barcode on it in order for you to scan it in your patient's room. So that's something that you are able to do as well. Also during this removal process, you are able to do a waste partial dose, so best practice is to waste on dispense. So you are able to do that here if you have a witness with you or a partner with you in order to waste your medications. Okay. It's a lot in one tabs. So those two items that I pulled out my lorazepam and I pulled out my Tylenol. Okay. So that's the removal process. All right. I'm going to go ahead and go to the return process and we'll do that together. So the return tab right underneath. Now it's more tabs at the bottom. Meds eligible for return. So remember those two items that I queued up for removal, they also are here for return. So I'm going to go ahead and return my Tylenol. I'm going to tap on my Tylenol. I have 1 to return and I'm going to say okay. Now my quantity to return right there is 1. So I'm going to go ahead and tap on return now. Again, it'll guide me back to that drawer. And it's giving me some instructions. If you don't know what to do, always look at the screen. The instructions tell me to scan the item barcode, okay? So there are some barcodes here, because like I said, we don't have training meds, so feel free to use these for your training and they'll be here in this room to practice. So I went ahead and scanned my Tylenol there. Always verify that your expiration date in your hand is congruent with the expiration date on the screen, okay? For best practice. And you go ahead and close it up. Right? That's returning your non-narcotic. To return a narcotic, you do need a witness to return an unopened, unused narcotic. And so it would prompt you that way, and you would have your person, your witness, come in and put in their credentials. Right? And that's the return process, the removal and return process we reviewed. Right? On to the waste process. Tabbing on waste meds. Again, that lorazepam is still there. It's on my meds requiring waste. I'm going to go ahead and tap on my lorazepam. And here we go. I have my administration amount 3 and my waste amount is 1. Okay. But say for example, we were in the middle of this transaction or we've left for the day, or excuse me, not left for the day, but we've gone to take care of another patient and we're coming back and we want to know where is our waste taking place. So if you remember this primary screen, I told you about the partial dose list. So with the partial dose list, if I tap on partial dose list, my patient is right there. Mr. Jason Barak. That's how I know that I have a potential waste or partial waste on that patient. Also, if I were to exit out completely, like I said, the example, you left, take care of another patient and you came back in. When you logged yourself back in, again, this would be a fingerprint. It tells me right here that you have partial dose issue that requires waste documentation. So that's another way to know that you have a waste out on somebody. So I'm going to actually go to my partial dose list and pull from Mr. Jason Barak. And go to my waste meds and go through that process, okay? Because like I said, this is wasting after dispense. So again, my lorazepam is here. I'm gonna go ahead and select it. My administration amount is 3. My waste amount is 1. Okay? You do have to give it a list of reasons for wasting the medication. So under the list of reasons, there are some pre-canned reasons that you're able to select. And for our example, it is partial dose. But say, for example, none of those issues listed here are applicable to why you needed to waste it. You are able to free text, okay? So I'm just gonna free text this and just say test for training. And I'm gonna say okay. Before I say okay, I do wanna let you know, those that are in PD, those that are in the NICU, there is a volume converter to help you. So if you need to convert for your little ones, you are able to do that here during the waste process. And I'm gonna say okay. Right here, it is prompting me to put in my witness again for training. That is our RN2, and that is RN2. 1, 2, 3, 6. Okay, right? So you may think, oh great, I went ahead and wasted my medication. I've gone through that process. So my wasting is 1, but now you need to select this record waste now. In order to, and you need to select this record waste now in order for the system to acknowledge the waste. So when I tap on record waste now, the system has accepted it. So when I go back to waste meds, my meds requiring waste, that medication is not there anymore. So I'm gonna go ahead and go out to my previous screen. And if you remember, these were your 3 main nursing functions up top. Right underneath the waste meds is removing kits. Now removing kits is a virtual kit. A lot of people are familiar with the tackle boxes, similar. A lot of people do the RSI tackle boxes. With the removed kits function, it's a virtual kit. So say for example, I'm from the OR. So we used to have a malignant hypothermia kit. And in the malignant hypothermia kit, there was Rhinodex, dantrolene, sterile water, and some syringes, just a couple of items. So when I would come to get the malignant hypothermia card, I would simply go to remove kits. I would tap on a kit that was there, whatever one was respective, and it would begin to illuminate the drawers of what to open. Okay, so like I said, it is a virtual kit. It's not so much a tackle box as what everyone is so familiar with. Okay. Pharmacy does build out those kits. A lot of nursing floors really like them. So if there is a kit that perhaps you'd be interested in, you can always consult with management and then with pharmacy. Okay. So those are your main functions here. So down at the bottom are your helpful super user functions here. So we were on patient care. Like I said, the system knows that we're here to take care of patients because we're logged in as a nurse. Okay? There are a couple of ways to get to that super user tab at the bottom. I could simply go to main menu and those functions are there. Or I can tap on a patient and get those functions there as well. So, like I said, we were on patient care. So over to the right, we have reports. So there are a couple of reports that you are able to run at the cabinet. Up top, you have transaction reports. So transaction reports are transaction by item, which is the medication. You have transaction by patient, which is what has Mr. Smith gotten taken out all day. And transaction by user. So what has Nurse Jackie or Nurse Jasmine for myself been taken out all day long? So you are able to use that function as well. Right underneath are your admin reports. This is very helpful if for charges or for managers, the discrepancy by user. So if you want to see what nurses out there have an unresolved discrepancy, you are able to tap on that. You can select all, and this is what it looks like. So the date range, it automatically populates itself to the last 8 hours. For the select type, it populates itself to control levels 2 through 5, and for the discrepancies, it populates itself to unresolved. So all you would need to do is change to the last 12 hours because most nursing units are 12 hours, but if you're in an OR or another procedural area, you can manipulate that time frame. And when you do run report, it'll give you a list of nurses that have outstanding discrepancies. So that's something that's very helpful. So that's under the admin report. Right underneath is inventory reports. So inventory reports is very helpful for pharmacy can use it, or say, for example, you just want to see what's in the cabinet for the start of the day. Right? So Omni Inventory is that report. So you're able to look at the quantity of controlled medications or all your medications. Say, for example, I tap on all my medications and run report. I'm able to see the quantity of what items I have in the cabinet. A lot of places do this as part of their daily checklist or to see just what you have. Up top, you have kits list. Now, kits list is, say, for example, you have a kit built out through pharmacy and you have a new staff, a new member, and you want to show them what's inside of the kit. So you would tap on kits list. Whatever kits that you had available, you can go ahead and tap on it and print, and you can print out a list to give them. Restock list is something that pharmacy uses, and then the med order reports tab is something that also pharmacy will use as well. Okay. The next one over is the most important of them all, is resolving discrepancies. So if you remember, we created a discrepancy with that lorazepam. So the receipt here, might be hard to see, so I'll put it on the back right here. So with the discrepancy receipt, it tells you the medication, it tells you who found the discrepancy, and the quantity information. One thing I do want to mention to stress about this discrepancy receipt is that it does have patient confidential information on it, so it does have PHI on it. So be mindful when you are discarding these to please put them in the shredder. We called it the sacred bin where I came from. So please feel free to use that bin to discard of these. Right? So one thing to mention is that the discrepancy receipt, everything that's on the discrepancy receipt, the system has accepted it in the event that you've misplaced that receipt. Okay? There's a couple of ways to know that you have a discrepancy, right? So I'm going to go ahead and exit out to show you a couple things. So if you notice, this icon is now illuminated. Prior to us starting our lesson, it was completely grayed out, similar to the other ones. That's one way to know that you have a discrepancy, right? Another way to know is if you remember, it asked me the question, are you sure that you're correct? That's another way to know that you're going to create a discrepancy. If I were to let this screen go to sleep, and it would be a black screen, across would go about some green ticker tape, and it would say that there are unresolved discrepancies on this Omni. Okay, so that's another way to know that you have a discrepancy. A couple of ways to know, and also the receipt will print out. So just so you know, there are a lot of ways to know that there are discrepancies. Okay. So I'm gonna log myself back in as our training nurse, and I'm gonna go to my main menu here. I apologize for that. And I'm gonna go to our resolve discrepancies. Okay. So going to resolve discrepancy, it auto-populates itself to control levels 2 through 5, which are the narcotics, which is what we care about most. and I'm going to tap on resolve discrepancies. Aha, perfect. So our patient here, Jason Barak, our lorazepam incident, like I said, everything that was on that receipt is dictated here. It just mirrors itself. So it tells me who found the discrepancy. It gives me the date and time, the previous user, and my quantity expectation. So and I'll go ahead and explain that because it's a bit tricky. So the quantity it expected, which is what the cabinet expected, it expected itself to have 96. The quantity found, which is what I inputted, was 195. The cabinet itself adjusted itself down by 1. So now the quantity remaining is 195. Okay? So best practice is to do a cycle count before resolving your discrepancies. So cycle count is right over here on the right-hand side. So I'm going to tap on cycle count. It directs me to my drawer where my lorazepam is. So I need a witness before I even open up this lid. Okay? So my RN2 for training, I'm going to go ahead and put in those credentials. But on a normal basis, you would simply fingerprint yourself. Okay, so after that person puts in their credentials, I'm able to lift the lid and we're able to do the count. So if you remember, I took out how many lorazepam? I took out 2 lorazepam, okay? So originally I said there was 195 and I removed 2. So now that would make it 193, okay? Or whatever quantity that you had inside, you go ahead and count it with your partner. Right? And I'm gonna go ahead and close it up. Right, your reopen last lid is still here. One word of caution, say for example, I close the lid all the way, but I need to reopen it. That reopen last lid button for anything will be gone. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and close that up. Okay, so we did our count. Me and my partner, we ensured that we had 193 vials of the lorazepam. So I have to give it a list of resolve reasons. So similar to the waste function, there are some pre-canned reasons that you're able to select. Already documented in report if you guys have a different kind of reporting system. Error in previous count back, error in previous quantity remove, and medication not removed, and unexplainable loss, see report. For this situation, it was a simple error in previous count back. Also, if none of those reasons are applicable to your particular situation, you are able to free text that as well. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and tap on my error in previous count back. And now I am able to resolve the discrepancy. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and have my RN2, my witness, come on in and put in their credentials. And now there are no more discrepancies. Okay. So, and notice how it cuts on its own and I just am lightly pulling it off. Okay, so don't yank it too hard. So the first receipt was a discrepancy receipt. And the second receipt now is the resolved discrepancy, okay? So remember when I said that this is patient specific information or PHI? This also on this ink here is laser burnt ink. So if you're so inclined to keep this or maintain this for any reason, for your own records, the laser burnt ink lasts about 20 days. So if there is a report that you need or a discrepancy receipt that you'd like to have on a more permanent basis, you can simply touch base with pharmacy and they can give you a report on a Word document or an Excel document. And that way so the ink won't merge itself. So the resolved discrepancy we reviewed reports, and our patient care was how we went through that removal and return and waste process together. Okay. The next one over is our inventory menus. So inventory menus is where you do your cycle counts. So coming in for the day, doing your cycle count together, you would tap on cycle count. Okay. You are able to find a direct item if you wanted to do the cycle count, or you are able to do a guided cycle count, and that will take you step by step how to do your cycle count, where each narcotic is, and you would have your person with you and you guys will be able to count together and do the witness process together. The next one over is your user menus. So the nice thing is that you guys have Active Directory. So when you change your passwords in Epic, you'll be able to use the exact same information here with the Omnicell, okay? So it will remember itself. So when you come in and do that, this change password option will not be there for you. So your user menus, when your fingerprint is registered, you're going to have a button that'll say re-enroll your fingerprint once your fingerprint is registered. So re-enroll your fingerprint under the user menus is helpful. So say for example, I've registered my 2 fingers, my index finger and my middle finger on my right hand. And I burned my finger, injured my other finger in some way. I still have one good finger to get into the cabinet. So I can simply fingerprint myself, go to user menus, re-enroll my fingerprint, and that way I can re-enroll another fingerprint, have 2 fingerprints ready to go. But say, for example, I injured my entire hand, I broke it, whatever the case may be, you would need another super user to come in and add your user fingerprints again on your secondary hand. So just be mindful of that. All right. The next one over is your admin menu. So admin menus have a couple of fun functions. So remember how we went over changing out the receipt paper and the label paper? A good rule of thumb, even for myself on the unit, I would come into my admin menus and I would test out the printers to ensure that the printers were aligned. So I would tap on label printer, that would get it aligned. So it just kind of prints out this little mock demo ticket there. And then for the receipt, I would tap on that. It would do the exact same thing in order to align itself. And it's really just a double check for yourself. And I'm gonna go to the previous screen. So the last function on here that I wanna go over with you guys is the fun function, flashing your LEDs, okay? Flashing your LEDs is very helpful to try to figure out what is going on with each drawer. So if you notice, the drawers are all illuminating, things are all going. But say, for example, this top drawer here, I know that my Zolpidem or my Tylenol or my whatever my item is always in this drawer, but this drawer is not lighting up. If you see here closely, there is a smooth surface here versus these lines here are 3 rid lines, okay? So that tells me that this drawer is double deeped because this is a faux front. Like I said, so this is smooth, indicating to me that this is a drawer all on its own, and this also is smooth, so it's a drawer all on its own. Okay? So just be mindful if you're instructed to flash your LEDs by pharmacy or even by Omnicell, if you needed to call them, and we'll have a direct line here on this panel. They would tell you to flash your LEDs to ensure that your drawer is working. And if your drawer is not working, a lot of the times they'll just come on in and replace it or see what's going on. Maybe it's jammed. So I'm gonna go back to my patient care screen. One of the most important functions that I can tell you guys is always exit every time you come to the cabinet, and F1. So a lot of information was given to you, but say for example, you just wanna know how to do a couple of quick functions, you are able to tap on F1, and F1 goes over normal day-to-day functions. So how to issue a medication, wasting partial dose during issue, recording waste, various function here, and it goes by step how to do something. So say for example, I want to know how to issue a medication. So right here, select a patient. There's a button here that says return. If I tap on return, it turns me to my primary screen. So the first one says select a patient. So I'm going to select a patient. Okay, now what do I do next? I can simply go to F1. My step 2 was press remove meds. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go to return and press remove meds. Okay, what do I do next? I can go to F1 again. So you can toggle back and forth with F1. So that's something that's incredibly helpful for you in order to do your day-to-day functions.